Hi, this is Chris Moriarty, and in this third short video about Simu-sportcentre, I'm going to show you the next set of decisions that we need to make within the simulation. So in the previous video we looked at setting opening times for different areas of the centre. So as you can see, I'm just on the screen now and I'm looking at the times that I've set for the swimming pool. I've clicked the set times button and the simulation has told me that the opening times for the pool have been updated. So once I'm happy that I've set all my opening times, the next thing to do is to consider what activities I'm going to program into the different areas of the centre. So I'm going to click on the Pool Program tab, and this will open the pool programming screen for me. Now within the simulation there is a degree of abstraction. You cannot and we cannot program for individual activities. That's to say, we can't say within the pool we're going to have a inflatable session followed by a school gala followed by an aerobics or aqua aerobics session. That would have made the simulation very, very complicated to program and to manage. So what we have is a degree of abstraction, and there are 4 programming categories which are available to program into any area of the centre, and these are casual. So casual covers all pay and play options. Educational, which covers all school usage. We have classes, and classes covers all types of classes from, for example, learn to swim through to life-saving classes, and in other areas of the centre, coached activity for sports which might happen in those areas of the centre. And then the final programming category is clubs. So if we look at the screen, we will see a couple of things. First of all, we'll see that in the pool, because we changed the opening hours, the centre is available to program from 7 o'clock in the morning. In other areas of the centre where we didn't change the default program, and if you remember, the default program is that the centre is open from 10 o'clock in the morning until 11 o'clock at night, the centre is not available to be programmed. And so if I just click back to the pool program, you'll see that on opening there is a default program which is available in the centre. So the default program is set and is explained in the seminar documentation. So the seminar documentation, this document here, contains information about the program which exists in the centre when the students take over management of the facility. So also the default setting for when you increase opening hours is casual, and because we decided to open the swimming pool earlier, the early morning sessions from 7 until 10 o'clock are set to casual swimming. If we decided that we wanted to put clubs in on a couple of mornings, we click on the clubs icon and then we just simply click on the times that we want clubs to have access for swimming use of the pool, and it changes the program type from casual to clubs. What we can do as well is we can set classes in the pool. So if we decide that after school time we want to change the sessions to classes, we can click and alter the program. So really, altering the program is a matter of thinking about what would a balanced program look like, and then using the programming subtypes and clicking on those icons and clicking onto the half-hour slots where we would like those to apply. So once we've arrived at a program that we're happy with and that we think is balanced and that we think meets the needs of the community that we're trying to serve, then it's possible for us to scroll down to the bottom of the page and click Save Schedule. This tells us that the pool program has been updated, and so when we move the simulation on, that is the program that will be moving forward. So we can then repeat the process for each of the different areas, but I'm not going to do that at the minute. I'm going to move on to the next section, which is pricing decisions. So we have the option to change prices for adults, under 16s, the unemployed and the elderly. Currently we can see that the prices are set at a default price, so we have the option of increasing or decreasing adult prices using the sliders. If we want, we can set an off-peak price, so we can differentiate the price between when we think it's going to be busy and when we think it might be quieter, to try to manage demand and encourage use during low demand periods. We can offer lower prices for children, or we can increase prices for children, and currently the price for adult, unemployed and the elderly is set at what was the default price of £3 for adults, but if we want, we can decrease that to try to meet social goals such as increasing usage amongst the unemployed and the elderly. So we can decrease the price, and once we're happy with doing that, we can click Set Prices, and again we get the screen which tells us that our prices in the pool have been updated. We would repeat this process then for the hall, the fitness studio, gyms, squash and the health spa. Once we've done that, then the next thing that we need to do is to tell the simulation when we want the peak and off-peak prices to apply. So the default setting for the simulation is that all times are peak times. Once we set an off-peak price, we need to tell the simulation when the off-peak period will be. So for us to do this, it's similar to the programming category. We click on when we want peak and off-peak to apply, and we can click and drag, and this will set to peak or off-peak the times that we want the relevant price to apply. So once I'm happy with that, or once you've made the changes, again save the schedule and you're ready to move on. So having just set the prices, it's worth just making a kind of learning point or discussion about pricing. First point to make is that Peter Taylor's manual contains a short chapter on pricing, and this discusses the role of pricing in leisure services, and it includes a short discussion on price elasticity of demand, the bases for setting prices, whether you set prices based on what the competition is setting, whether you set prices on the basis of wanting to encourage participation, or whether you set prices on the basis of what it actually costs to offer the service. It has a discussion of that. It discusses price differentiation, so for example discounts and the role that discounts have on encouraging participation for the socially disadvantaged. It also considers pricing and cross-subsidisation in sport. So can you charge or generate revenues through pricing in some areas to cross-subsidise loss-making activities in other areas of the centre? I think it's also worth making a point that within the simulation there isn't a pricing option to introduce memberships, and this is because at the core of the model is a series of price visit relationship algorithms which actually drive this part of the simulation, and adding memberships would diminish the effect of the pay and play relationship, and really would reduce opportunities for students to evaluate the effects of pricing for different activities. So although increasingly certainly in the UK, the model is to move towards memberships and a direct debit approach to pricing, for the purposes of the simulation and for the learning of the students, we've maintained a pay and play model, and also a kind of group block booking system which clubs can use. So that's just a point worth making about pricing. The other point to make as well is that it allows the lecturer an opportunity to consider pricing from a different perspective. And recently, and if you look in textbooks, certainly I find that most of the literature these days on pricing is about ticketing for events and for football, the Premier League in England, dynamic pricing in professional sports. This allows us to look at other aspects of pricing. So the next set of decisions to input relate to whether we charge a peak or an off-peak price, or whether students set a peak or an off-peak price. So when the page opens, we can see that the simulation default setting is for peak prices to be charged at all times. Now, if students decide to offer or set an off-peak adult price, then they will need to decide when the off-peak price should apply. The simulation handbook, the seminar documentation, contains a complete set of results from the year before the students take over management of this centre. Now, this information within the simulation handbooks includes information on visits by times of the week and times of the day, so that students can see what appear to be peak and off-peak periods. So students are required to use their skills at looking at usage to try and determine when visits look lighter or when the centre looks quieter and when it looks busier. So they use a mix of intuition and evidence to try to decide when to set off-peak prices, if they decide that they're going to use off-peak pricing as a strategy. So to set off-peak pricing, it's a similar process to the programming of the different areas that we looked at. So we click on the off-peak icon and we can set the times at which we want off-peak pricing to be available. I'm not going to go through the full page and set this up, but you can see the principle here. So once we're happy with that, then we just save the schedule and the page will tell us that our changes have been saved. Now, the final set of decisions which the student needs to set repair to 3 items of expenditure which the students as managers have control over, and these are repairs and maintenance, cleaning and marketing. So if we look at repairs and maintenance, what we can see is that the repairs and maintenance budget, the default setting is £90,000. The student or the user can set that anywhere between £150,000 and 0. Now within the simulation, different areas of the centre have different maintenance spending requirements. So if these are not met, then the probability of breakdown increases. If they are met, the probability of breakdown decreases, but importantly, it doesn't disappear. That's to say that breakdowns are a mix of probability and the random, and the simulation generates random breakdown occurrences. So if you increase your expenditure on maintenance above £90,000, you reduce the likelihood of breakdown, but you do not eliminate the likelihood of breakdown. Similarly, if you reduce the repairs and maintenance budget in order to try to save costs, for example, then you increase the likelihood of breakdown, but because of the random nature of breakdowns, you still might find, or the student might find, that they still get away with making maintenance expenditure cuts, but they do not suffer from breakdown. So, as in the real world, there is an element of risk and chance with breakdown. The way I explain this to students is just because you pay for maintenance and servicing on your car, that doesn't mean that you won't break down. And similarly, if you decide to miss a servicing schedule or maintenance schedule on your car, you may get away without breaking down. In the long run, the likelihood is that you are more likely to break down. If the facility does experience a breakdown, then there are two consequences for the student's results. The first is a cost consequence. The breakdown will need to be repaired, and the simulation contains costs for breakdown costs per day for different areas of the centre. There's a random aspect in that this facility or areas of the centre, when they break down, are broken down for different periods of time. Obviously, a shorter breakdown requires less repair costs. A longer period of breakdown requires greater repair costs. And there are also impacts of breakdowns on visits and therefore revenues, because while the facility or while the area of the facility is broken down and closed, it's not available for users or customers to visit, and therefore visit numbers will decline and revenue declines. So the maintenance and repairs expenditure puts students in the position where they need to weigh the potential costs and benefits of maintenance expenditure decisions. The second category of expenditure decisions is cleaning, and students can decide to increase or decrease cleaning. Cleaning does have an impact on customer satisfaction within the simulation as measured by complaints. So if a student decides to cut costs by reducing the cleaning budget, this is likely to lead to an increase in the number of complaints. And within the simulation, as the number of complaints increases, this has an effect on the number of visits. So high numbers of complaints caused by poor cleaning leads to a loss in visits and a loss in revenue. The students are made aware of this to a degree within the simulation handbook and the instructions that they need to read before beginning, but this isn't made crystal clear to them. And finally, students have the opportunity to make decisions about marketing expenditure. The simulation handbook tells students that as far as marketing expenditure is concerned, there appears to be some correlation between an increase on spending in marketing and an increase in visits and revenue. But students would need to make the decision and evaluate that for themselves. What it's important to tell students is they can't make assumptions about things that they cannot evidence in their results. So the simulation actually gives very limited information in terms of the effect of marketing. So that's just something to be aware of when working with students on this. So once we are happy with our expenditure decisions, we can click Set Expenses. The model tells us that expenditure has been updated, and that completes all of the decisions that we need to make. So the next thing for us to do is, if we're happy with all the decisions that we make, we move to click Quarterly Results. So the simulation provides results on a quarterly basis. Students can evaluate their progress towards their objectives on a quarterly basis, and basic information, management information, is available on a quarterly basis once decisions have been inputted. So what we're going to do now is click Quarterly Results. And in the next short video, I'll just give a brief explanation of the information that's provided in Quarterly Results.